Women humiliate this black janitor, but didn't know she's the CEO. A well-dressed woman in her 60s, Eleanor Jackson, steps into the grand lobby of her own company. But today she's unrecognizable in a simple janitor's uniform. Her gentle face hides a wealth of experience, but her eyes are sharp, noticing details that others might overlook. With her cleaning cart at her side, she quietly moves through the hallways, watching, listening, and keeping herself in the background. It's as if she's invisible. In another corner of the building, 3 HR employees, Sandra, Mike, and Lisa, are chatting in their department. Sandra, the leader of the group, is known for her boldness. Mike, who laughs a little too loud, often follows her lead. Lisa, the youngest, joins in, eager to impress her colleagues. They hold influential positions in the office and take great pride in their polished appearances, exuding confidence in their authority. When they talk about others, especially lower-level staff, they do so with a hint of superiority. To them, a janitor is just someone passing through, barely worth a glance. As Eleanor quietly works, pushing her cart through the halls, she enters the break room where the HR trio is gathered. She goes about her tasks, wiping tables and refilling supplies, aware of their presence but never looking up. The 3 employees barely acknowledge her. In fact, they don't seem to notice her at all. They're too busy discussing the mess the janitor left last week, laughing as if she's not even there. Their voices carry, and each word stings, though Eleanor doesn't show it. Then Sandra glances her way, and for a moment, her eyes narrow. She leans back in her chair, a smirk on her face, and makes a comment under her breath. "You'd think people in her position would try harder," she says, loud enough for Eleanor to hear. Eleanor pauses, her face calm but her eyes shadowed by something deeper. She finishes wiping the table and moves on, her expression steady and revealing nothing. As Eleanor leaves the room, the HR team laughs again, continuing their conversation without a second thought. To them, she's just a janitor. To her, they are a reminder of something much bigger. Though no one, not even the trio, knows just how big her role really is. Welcome back to Plot Twister. Before we unravel today's mystery, don't forget to like, subscribe, and click the notification bell so you're always in the loop. Eleanor is quietly cleaning the break room, focused on her work, when Sandra, Mike, and Lisa walk in, filling the space with laughter and conversation. As they settle at a nearby table, they glance at Eleanor, but don't acknowledge her presence. To them, she's just part of the background, barely worth a nod or smile. Sandra glances back down at her cup, lifts it, and with a smirk, tilts it slightly so the coffee spills across the table, splashing onto the floor. Without missing a beat, she lets out a loud laugh and looks over at Eleanor, who has already moved to clean up the spill. Sandra leans back in her chair and says, "Well, I guess we know whose job it is to fix this mess." Eleanor keeps her expression steady, her movements controlled as she wipes up the coffee with a cloth. Inside, her thoughts are racing, but she doesn't let anything show. She simply finishes the task, ignoring the glances and smirks that follow her. She's seen this kind of behavior before, and each time it's no easier to swallow. As Eleanor quietly continues cleaning, Sandra, Mike, and Lisa dive back into their conversation. They talk about their weekend plans, about company policies, and then subtly about people who don't quite belong. Their words are vague, but their eyes flicker toward Eleanor, making the target clear. Lisa leans in and murmurs something that makes Mike chuckle, and Sandra just shakes her head with a sigh of mock disappointment. Eleanor says nothing. She doesn't need to. She finishes wiping the table, then stands and begins collecting trash from around the room. Her presence seems to fuel their whispers and smirks, but she remains focused, her gaze fixed on her task. As Eleanor leaves the room, Sandra mutters one last comment under her breath. Some people need to learn their place. Eleanor pauses just for a moment, and for a split second, something flickers in her eyes. But she keeps moving, pushing her cart down the hall without looking back. Her face expressionless, though inside, the tension is building, and she feels it growing with every step she takes away from the break room. One morning, Eleanor is mopping a hallway near the HR offices, focused on the rhythmic motion of the mop sliding across the floor. Just as she finishes, Sandra appears, her expression cold. She clears her throat, crossing her arms as she eyes the freshly cleaned floor with a look of disapproval. Sandra's voice is sharp as she speaks, loud enough for a few nearby employees to hear. "You missed a spot," she says, pointing to an area Eleanor had just mopped. "Honestly, at your age, shouldn't you know how to do this by now?" Her tone is condescending, almost taunting, as if Eleanor's years of experience and quiet dignity mean nothing. Mike and Lisa join in, strolling up behind Sandra with amused looks on their faces. They exchange glances, clearly entertained, each adding their own jabs about the poor job she is doing, questioning her work ethic in low voices, just loud enough to humiliate her further. Eleanor stands still, her hands gripping the mop a little tighter. She keeps her face calm, letting their words roll over her without a reaction, though each insult stings deeper than the last. She looks around, noticing a few other employees passing by, casting sympathetic but silent glances her way. No one says a word. No one steps in. Then Lisa pulls a paper towel from a nearby dispenser, holds it out to Eleanor and says with a smirk, "Here, maybe this will help you keep up." Mike chuckles, nudging Sandra as if they're sharing a private joke, and Sandra just shakes her head in mock pity, her eyes gleaming with something close to triumph. For a moment, Eleanor looks at the paper towel, her expression unreadable. She reaches out slowly, takes it and continues her work without a word, her face carefully blank. Inside, though, a storm is brewing. A storm held back by years of patience and understanding, but now pushed nearly to its limit. As she moves away from the group, their laughter echoes behind her, filling the empty hallway with a cruel, biting sound. Eleanor walks on, her head held high, her steps steady, but anyone watching closely would see the change in her eyes. A steely determination, flickering there like a fire waiting for the right moment to ignite. A few days later, a memo goes out across the company. An all-hands HR meeting has been called by the CEO to discuss urgent matters regarding company culture and employee respect. The news ripples through the office, sparking curiosity and hushed conversations. Sandra, Mike, and Lisa shrug it off, thinking it's just another meeting where they'll discuss policies and procedures. They gather in the conference room, chatting and laughing, not realizing they're about to experience something they never saw coming. Eleanor is in the conference room setting up refreshments and arranging chairs as employees trickle in, giving her polite nods and quiet greetings. The HR trio, though, barely notices her presence. They see her wiping down tables and assume it's just part of her usual work. Sandra raises an eyebrow at Eleanor's careful setup, but doesn't give it much thought, figuring the janitor has been asked to tidy up before the CEO arrives. The rooms fill up, with executives, managers, and other key staff members taking their seats, each glancing at Eleanor with a hint of familiarity. Some exchange curious glances, wondering why she's here, but no one questions it aloud. Sandra, Mike, and Lisa sit at the front, relaxed and confident, waiting for the CEO to make an appearance. Their expressions a mix of boredom and mild interest. The murmurs in the room die down as one of the senior board members steps forward and clears his throat. He gestures towards Eleanor, who is still standing quietly at the head of the room, and nods with respect. The HR trio stares, puzzled as the board member announces that Eleanor will be leading the meeting. Confused glances pass between Sandra, Mike, and Lisa, their expressions turning from boredom to confusion, then disbelief. Eleanor steps forward, her demeanor calm but commanding. The room falls silent as she looks out over the assembled team, her gaze lingering just slightly on the 3 HR workers who had mocked her. Sandra shifts uncomfortably, her confidence wavering for the first time. Mike and Lisa exchange uneasy looks, each starting to feel the weight of something they don't yet understand. Without breaking her calm tone, Eleanor introduces herself and begins to speak. And as her words fill the room, the realization starts to dawn on the HR trio. Their faces pale, the full impact of the moment beginning to sink in as they realize that everything they thought they knew about the janitor was wrong. Eleanor stands before the room, her calm gaze moving steadily from one person to the next. She begins to speak, her voice clear and steady, recounting her experience over the past few weeks. She describes the daily interactions she observed, the countless times employees were overlooked and disrespected, and the behavior she witnessed firsthand. Her words hang heavy in the room, a quiet intensity filling every corner as each person listens, absorbed. The HR trio sits frozen, their faces a mix of shock and disbelief. Sandra's smirk is gone, replaced by a look of rising panic. Mike fidgets in his chair, his eyes wide, while Lisa stares down at her hands, her face growing pale as the truth settles in. Eleanor's words seem to cut deeper with each passing moment, and it's clear that her story is more than just a report. It's an exposure of everything they thought was hidden. Eleanor pauses, letting the silence stretch as she lets the weight of her words sink in. Then she straightens and looks directly at the trio, her gaze unwavering. With quiet authority, she reveals her true position as the CEO, and a wave of realization ripples through the room. Gasps and murmurs break out as everyone absorbs this revelation. The HR team stares at her, horrified, realizing that the janitor they had dismissed and mocked was the very person at the top. Eleanor doesn't dwell on their reaction. Instead, she turns to the entire room, speaking of the need for a workplace where respect isn't just a policy, but a practice that includes everyone. She announces new standards and initiatives aimed at reshaping the culture, making it clear that every person from janitor to executive deserves equal respect. As she finishes, the room is silent. A powerful shift settles over the group. Sandra, Mike, and Lisa sit speechless, their arrogance shattered, each understanding the weight of their actions and the consequences they may soon face. Eleanor's gaze softens lightly as she steps back, her mission fulfilled, knowing that change has already begun to take root. In the days that followed, the atmosphere in the company transforms. Employees greet one another with newfound respect, small gestures of kindness appearing where there once was indifference. Eleanor watches from her office, satisfied, knowing that her quiet stand has sparked a change far greater than anyone could have expected. What are your thoughts on the twist we uncovered today? Comment your ideas below. Make sure to like and subscribe for a daily dose of drama and mystery. And we'll see you with another twist.